I just saw Jungle Cruise starring The Rock, and that's if you smell what the flick pick is watching. Sorry, that was a throwback to The Rock's wrestling days. But as far as this film goes, it's everything I thought it would be. It was slightly better in the first half. The second half sort of turned into that bloated cliche film you've already seen 12 other times, but in better films. But if you're looking for a family action adventure film that just looks expensive, starring The Rock looking all vascular with amazing bicep definition, and Emily Blunt sort of being the, the acting that carries the movie, and The Rock's more of the charisma and muscle that carries the movie, I would say it's an entertaining time if you're going to take kids to it. For me, it just felt like a blend of 12 other movies that I probably like more than this movie. Sort of like Pirates of the Caribbean meets The Mummy meets Indiana Jones, except I like all of those movies more than this. But not to say that I wasn't entertained at times by Jungle Cruise, which is based on a Disney attraction, and this is nothing new. Disney has been making movies based on their attractions. They had Pirates of the Caribbean, The Haunted Mansion, Tomorrowland. And with all that said, one of those movies was entertaining, and I really do enjoy the first Pirates of the Caribbean film. I thought that was phenomenal and entertaining, and I can rewatch it all the time. I don't think this is going to have the same rewatchability or charisma as something like Pirates of the Caribbean, but it does try at times. And, you know, I would say it's a fun theater experience. If you're going to see this movie and you're going to see it in IMAX or something, it's justified by going to the big screen to see it, because you do have these big action sequences, this spectacle. For me, the weak point of this film was the third act. It just became so cliche, and it almost felt like it was making less sense. Like, I enjoyed the journey, I enjoyed the adventure, but once they got to their destination, I was like, I don't really even care anymore. There's a cop car right there, and I feel like they're watching me, but that doesn't matter. I can talk about movies as loud as I want. But let's get back to Jungle Cruise. It definitely was very reminiscent to one of my favorite guilty pleasure movies of all time, and that's The Mummy, that came out in 1999, starring Brendan Fraser. And this movie, it borrowed a lot from that, because you essentially have Emily Blunt, who's this educated, adventurous scholar lady who's looking for something in the middle of nowhere, and she has a brother who's a little bit bougie, and when he travels with like 87 suitcases. Very reminiscent to the original Mummy movie, and she seeks out a guy who's a little bit rough around the edges but knows his way in the wilderness, and that's The Rock's character, who's also a skipper. So that entire sort of premise, I felt like they just ripped right out of The Mummy and threw into this, which it was fine by me. I thought it was fine. I really did enjoy The Rock's character in this film. Now, I've never been on the Jungle Cruise ride at Disney, but I know people who have, and they say when you go on that ride, the skipper on that ride makes these like corny little pun jokes the entire time. And in the beginning of this movie, The Rock did the same thing, which I sort of liked. It gave his character a little bit more flavor. That sounds weird. I just said The Rock had some flavor. I wonder what The Rock tastes like. Salty? Probably. Okay. And continuing on with the plot, it does remind you of like an Indiana Jones movie or a Mummy movie, where they're chasing down this artifact that has magical super duper abilities and powers. And the bad guys, the antagonists of the film, are a group of Nazis, and the main one is played by Jesse Plemons, I believe, the guy who starred in Breaking Bad, who does play a great villainous character. And he has this acting style about him. Sometimes I can't tell if he's just a bad actor or he's just doing such a good job where you can't quite like, it almost is like on the verge of like Nicolas Cage acting. It's so over the top and bizarre at times, but I'm never not entertained by him. But anyway, yeah, Nazis are the bad guys in this movie, so you definitely have that Indiana Jones vibe going on. But now let me give you my final flicking thoughts on the film, and let me do this in my car. It's really loud out here and windy, and I just feel like people are looking at me. Maybe I'm paranoid. I don't know what's going on today. I would say this is a mildly entertaining film. It's one of the better live-action Disney films I've seen in a while. It's definitely better than the animated, adapted to live-action movies like The Lion King or Aladdin or something along those lines. Like I said, I really enjoyed the first half of this movie, and then when you sort of just unravel the plot a little too much and they get to where they're going, I'm like, yeah, I lost interest, but I really enjoyed Emily Blunt and The Rock's chemistry in this movie. I thought this was one of the better Rock movies in a very long time, because he's been starring in nothing but generic, instantly forgettable action films. And I would say this is one of his better movies. At least he got to like have some charisma and make some jokes along the way in this movie that stood out. Also, I really enjoyed, there's one sequence in the halfway point of this movie where they give you more backstory about The Rock's character, and they're playing a song by Metallica, which is one of my favorite metal bands of all time, and it's Nothing Else Matters, but it's sort of like a remix version of that song. And this song just fit this sequence so perfectly, and I felt like it truly elevated it. And I was like, yeah, give me more of that. I wish they would have done the soundtrack to the entire movie. But overall, as far as Jungle Cruise goes, I would say, yeah, if you got a family, if you're bored, you want to see something on the big screen, it's It's just escapism, and it's a spectacle movie. Is it going to be as memorable as something like The Mummy or Pirates of the Caribbean or Indiana Jones? Absolutely not. But overall, I did enjoy the movie. If I had to give it a grade, I would give it this right here. And gone. It's gone. But here's my question for you guys, and let me know down below if you've seen Jungle Cruise, what did you think about it? Or what is your favorite film starring The Rock? If I had to pick one, I actually would say it's another movie starring The Rock. It's an action film that takes place in the jungle as well, and that's called The Rundown, which is a really underrated movie, and I think it's one of Rock's better movies that he's ever made. So definitely check that movie out if you haven't. It came out in like 2003. Highly recommend it. As always, guys, share your thoughts, your opinions down below. Make sure you subscribe. That way, I can see you next time. Bye.